in it, but which leads us naturally to what's going on with Artie. I'm sure that was your next question.
I wasn't going to ask. No, I will ask.
Yeah, you will. You were going to ask. Who you kidding? You think it's not my first rodeo here? No, listen. I love Artie. We incorporated his character into the script. We incorporated Ralph Macchio's character into the script. Ralph was like more open-minded, but he was like, "Let me see what you guys come up with," kind of thing, which is fine. I'm friends with him too. He's a good guy. Do we necessarily need Ralph Macchio? No, but we definitely need the big man. But Artie is, he's just not quite ready to make his comeback. He knows what's going on. That's why we kept his character in the series. And the minute Artie wants to hop back in, would be instant. He gets thrown right in, and he's back, and he's in it. So, but it's just a lot of fun. You just get to see the guys. We got everybody else, and you get to see where are these guys 16 years later. Obviously, we're fat, we're balder, and so it's stuff like that. It's all fun. It's just a bunch of guys talking at the bar. We got Manganelli, and once we have Manganelli, to me, the key character was Manganelli. Without Manganelli, you don't really have, beer league as well. But Artie will be involved soon enough. I promise you that.
So you've mentioned him. Let's update at all. I mean, he was on Cameo.
He wants you to say, happy birthday, Riley. And I know you've been going through some challenges at work. And don't lose that smile that he fell in love with, all right? Your exemplary work ethic, you'll get through the stronger and noted even more favorably by your bosses. All right? So just know that we love you. I love you. Okay, Riley? That's very important to know. So listen. The hell with challenges at work. You're going to get through them fine. Everything's going to be fine. And I know you got a great smile. Brad loves it so much. So keep up that smile. Keep up the good work. And note it even more favorably than your bosses is going to be what happens. All right? You got an exemplary work ethic.
We saw him kind of doing a podcast. He sort of stopped. Looked like he was doing well.
Well, listen, I'm always in a rough spot here in terms of like privacy and stuff like that. And I do sometimes get in trouble when I talk about Artie, but I would tell you this, listen, he's sober and he's just trying to put it all together right now. And he's, when you had a long time of drugs and drinking and all that stuff, and you finally do cross over that barrier, it just takes you time to put it all together. He's got a loving family. They're supportive. He's got loving friends as well. He's got a loving fan base. And it's just a matter of him really kind of putting it all together. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and it's sad because you see him and he comes back and he looks good. And then kind of goes away, and then that becomes that, well, what happened, because it looked like he was doing well. So I assume or hope that he was...
He looks good. Obviously, he looks good. He's got a little nose issue that's got to be worked on, but he looks healthy. I mean, he's not really fat anymore, and looks good, except for the nose. And people always ask me, how's his nose? I'm like, well, he'll eventually get that worked on and stuff. So I'm probably saying too much. But listen, I love Artie, and anybody involved with Artie knows that. Matter of fact, I used to hate and I'll say something. I don't care. I'm 57 years old. Where am I going? I used to hate, there was an Artie Lange before Howard Stern. There was an Artie Lange before Mad TV. I worked with him in a sketch group. And Artie Lange was the funniest guy. He's the funniest guy I've ever met. Now, people talk about all the Howard Stern stuff. Okay. Yeah, he was great on Stern. I get that. But Artie was a force on the stage doing sketch comedy. That's why when he got to Mad TV, he probably had the least amount of experience. And he dominated that show, too. If you watch back the old sketches, and that cast is great people, but Artie was, listen, anytime Artie gets involved, he's like Michael Jordan. Sitting at the bar with Artie, we'd laugh. We would giggle. The two of us ended up sitting in the corner just laughing, imitating Yankee announcers. He's the funniest guy. Just forget about the TV work. He's the funniest guy I've ever met. And then, of course, he got Mad TV, which was awesome. And we went out there for the taping. We felt like somebody popped, somebody made it, which was cool. And then our show got signed by NBC. Live on Tape was the name of the show. We got a huge development deal to be on NBC on Friday nights and stuff, late at night sketch show. So the two of us, two jackasses from Jersey, came out of this, and Artie, Artie was just kicking ass. But Artie ran into some personal, issues, and the rest is history. But he got on Stern, and he was just great on there. He was the #1 radio show of all time. And there's two kinds of people with Howard Stern. There's people that say, "Oh, I miss the old Jackie the Joke Man days," and then there's people that say, "Oh, the Artie Lange years on Stern were the best, by far." And I tend to agree with that. But I will say that I'm not a Howard Stern aficionado. I was not. If anything, I was listening to I Miss More in My House for whatever reason. I don't know why. My brother had it on. I don't even know. It just was AM radio, maybe. I don't even know. But I listened to it when I lived in LA when Artie was on. And Artie did a great job on that show. And his stand-up was great. And so, we could talk. I could talk about Artie till the cows come home. He's a good guy. He's got a loving soul, and many people have had interactions with him personally. We'll tell you, Artie's a good guy, But listen, people run into some problems, and they got to work them out. It's just going to take some time.
Yeah,
Good guy.
Yeah, we talked a little bit yesterday, about just, I've met him a few times. I'm not sure if he was under the influence at that time, but he was super sweet and super nice to me. The Dark Side of the Comedy thing came out, and he was featured. And I interviewed his author of his books, and my question that as I was watching, I was like, I wonder if Artie likes that this is happening or doesn't. What was his thoughts?
Yeah, look, when that show came out, the producer contacted me, Dark Side of Comedy, and I was listening to her, and she was like, "Now I know what those shows are like," and I said to myself, no matter what I say, they can edit it to make it look like you can edit this show. What I just said, like what I just said about Artie in my mind is very loving. Okay, someone can interpret it differently, and I don't really care. I stand by what I said. I didn't say anything wrong in my mind. But when you edit it with facial expressions, and I know these shows, the only way to make money is to make Artie look like a fool. And what annoyed me about the show, this I will say, they had some people on that show that, like, they had a guy, one of the comedians from Mad TV. He wasn't on the show when Artie was there. So you might as well have on, anybody to talk about Artie Lange. You could have been on to talk about him. And they had a couple other people on the show that I was like, wow, these people don't know him. But Orlando Jones was the one guy who, he teared up and stuff. And I'm like, because I know I lived with Orlando for a couple of weeks, and so did Artie live with him for 2 years. Orlando Jones knows the deal, and he was honest, he was sweet, and he loves him too. I've become, somewhat friends with Orlando, and over the years, another good guy. But some of the people that were commenting on that show, I didn't think knew what the hell they were, and there was facts that were wrong. But those are the nature of those shows. I get it. I just decided I wanted nothing to do with that. And I'm very glad I did. Probably would have got a paycheck out of it. Artie probably would have told me, I told him afterwards, but he probably would have said, take the money, screw him, take the money. But he's a friend of mine. You don't do that. I think in the days of the social media, everybody doesn't have to know everything every 5 seconds. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like everybody just anyway, but he's a celebrity, a radio personality, and Stern and all that. And, I don't know. I just, why do those kind of shows? It was just, plus it was I watched it. I almost shut it off because it was like, it just was hard for me to watch that because I know the guy really well,
It was sad. It really did it was sad and depressing, I would say. And we also talked about, right around that time, the Matthew Perry interview happened. And so there was all this basically talk about, addiction but his interview really, and we talked about this yesterday, I realized how hard it is to be an addict because of that detox. Once you're on something, you can't get off it, and the only thing that makes it feel better is more. And I was meant to mention to you, like, I've never had any sort of addiction that I know of, except for maybe caffeine. And when I have to get off caffeine, I am effed.
Yesterday, and I'm drinking coffee, and I said, Brad told me yesterday, no way I get off caffeine. But it's even more than that. I think you're right about addictions. Obviously heroin is a tough one. But, anything you do every day, and then you don't have it every day, that's a change. And you could take that as far as, like, if you've been married for 40 years and then your spouse dies, you not that you were addicted to your spouse, but you're used to having that element in your life, and now it's gone. Or you stop drinking coffee, and it definitely takes, I think they say 30 days or 60 days to form a new habit, whatever. There's some kind of scientific thing. But yeah, I mean, even drinking, I think when you get older, you always feel like, I got to cut down on the beers. I think most people feel that way. But then you go out with your friends. You go out to a nice restaurant. And next thing you know, you're having wine. In other words, it's social. There's a lot of things like that. So, yeah, addiction is not easy, man. And you could always go back. The only problem with heroin is, I was told this by a counselor, if you stop drinking and you're sober for 2 years, and then you have a couple glasses of wine, right? Your neighbors may know it, your wife may know it, something, hey, I noticed you've been drinking again, blah, blah, blah. But you're only doing like 30 miles an hour, and it takes a while for it to take hold again. Heroin, when you stopped, you were doing 150 miles an hour, and then you stop for 3 years, and the minute you go back, you're right back to 150 miles an hour again. And then with the crap that's mixed in this stuff, people die. Many people 2 months out of rehab die from heroin because they go back and their body can't handle it. So heroin's a little bit of a different egg, but yeah, it's Matthew Perry. I mean, my God. I mean, I did an episode of Friends. I don't even know if you know that. I did one of the biggest ones. Jennifer Aniston Has the Baby. It was a big one. I met all those guys. They were so calm and relaxed. See, I'm segueing off Artie Lange. No, but Matthew Perry, here's a guy worth, I mean, I know what I make from my one episode in residuals. I can only imagine just the residuals alone. Plus, they were making $1.5 or $1.2 million an episode. He's super loaded. And, but drinking and drugs got a hold of him. And, so it doesn't matter whether you're a garbage man, a postman, an actor, a star. Once these things grab hold of you, you need family support. You need good, it's a whole process after that. But yeah, I watched that interview. I'm like, and Matthew Perry to me still looks messed up. I think he's still on drugs. That's what I felt anyway. But it's just a crazy thing,
Yeah. And lastly on Artie, when was the last time you talked to him, and how's his mother? I love his mom. I love the stories.
Listen, his mom's doing well. She's a great lady. Look, she's been through a lot with Artie, and they're cool. And Artie's sister they're doing good, but they're struggling with it as well. It's a hard thing, but she's good. She's getting older now, of course, and but she's doing good. She's doing good. She looks good too. She always was she's a sweet lady. I talk to her and her sister more than I do Artie. Artie sometimes, you have to send a bunch of texts for him to finally get back to you. But I talked to Artie, I guess it was 2 months ago or something like that. And so he showed up at one of my stand-up shows, which was really cool. But that was maybe 8-9 months ago. I did a show in Hoboken. He showed up, and the cool part about it was all the younger comics that were there were like, oh my God, Artie Lange here. They were going up to him, and I told him, I was like, Art, so many, not only your friends and family love you, that's a given. I said, but there's a lot of young comics that were listening to Stern. When I say a young comic, 28-year-old, so they were 15 listening to Stern, and they love you. They idolize you. And it's I think it made him feel good. For sure. And I hope he's back someday, Yeah. So that's that. That concludes the Artie Lange version of the long interview. But I don't mind talking about Artie. I mean, I'm not trying to, some people say, oh, look at this guy. There was some things on Facebook one time that on one of the Artie Lange superfan pages, and they said like, oh, there's another guy still trying to cash in on Artie. And I'm like, man, that's not really what's going on here. But I get it. If you didn't know me and you didn't know my world, you could say, oh, look at this guy. But it's really not that at all. I mean, I've been on a bunch of films and TV shows myself. So I've carved out my own career, still in the business myself. I'm just happen to be an old time friend of Artie. I met him in 1990. That's a long time ago, you know?
Yeah.
So, and Artie would, you know, if someone stuck a microphone in Artie's face and said my name, he would, it wouldn't be like, oh, I remember him. It's not like that. You know what I mean? But I still love him. And as many do. And hopefully he'll be back soon.
Yeah, we all do. Now, what's the problem with Larry David? Let's talk about his issues. No, some of the things that you've done, you mentioned Friends, but seeing you in a scene with Larry David is so awesome, man. I mean, it's tell me.
Listen, I think I got a story with that. When I came back from LA for the summer. Now, I used to leave LA right before Memorial Day because I had a shore house on the Jersey Shore with like 10 of my buddies, 15 of my buddies. So I'd always come home. When I left LA, people were like, why do you leave LA for 3 months? I'm like, I'm going to the Jersey Shore. What are you nuts? I'm not staying in LA. I came home. I was home a day. I get this audition, and it's for Curb. And I'm like, oh, I love that show. So I end up going. I go to the audition, and all you do is get a strip of paper. It just says, you're giving him, he gives you a tip, and you don't know if you keep it for yourself. That's all it said. But when I walked in the room, I got another piece of paper for a smaller role, right? In the room, though, was every major actor because it was Curb doesn't shoot in New York. This was the final episode of the season. There was every actor, Broadway star. There was every name in New York in the acting where I was like, whoa. I'm like, I'm not booking this. These are heavy hitters in here. I mean, I was the least, the bottom of the totem pole for sure. And so I go in the room, and you're in a room the size of my kitchen table here. And it's Larry David and Jeff, the manager in the show, Jeff Garland. And you're in this little room, and there's Larry. And right before I went in, the casting director grabs the piece of paper, and she says in front of everybody, oh, no, Jimmy, that role's too small for you. Let me give you a better one. Now, how cool is that? That lady, I was like, oh, there you go. And she wants bigger things for me. But yeah, it was one of those moments where it's like, I was like, the other people were like, ooh, who's that? He needs a bigger role. One of those, listen, it so rarely happens in showbiz where someone tells you you're good, you know what I mean? So I go in this room. Now, I didn't know Larry David personally, but when you go in the room, I try to explain this to people. And I think it's funny. When you go in the room, the audition, you are in an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. Curb. In other words, he's Larry David, like you're in the show. He's a little rude. He's a little. He doesn't really look you in the eye. It's weird. And so we did a take, and he was like, I gave you a face like, oh, that sucked. And then I got it to where I thought it should be. I did very little. That's what I was told. And then he looks at Jeff like, how was that, Jeff? Good. I think this guy's good. Yeah, it was so awkward. You walk out of there, I was like, what? Next thing you know, I get the call that I book it, right? So they send me to the theater where the producers was a live Broadway show, and this whole season was about the producers. And I go there, and I can't find anybody. I'm in front of the box office. I'm like, it was already a weird shoot. Who do I see? The guy on CBS late night. What's his name? He wasn't a star then. Either.
Colbert.
Who?
Colbert.
Yeah. Colbert's there, and nobody knew who he was. I did because of the circles I ran in. And next thing you know, this lady comes up to me. She goes, "Oh, you're Jimmy Palumbo. You got to go to your trailer." I said, "Okay, that's normal." So she sends me a block away. You'll see this. So I go out there, and there's only one, like Winnebago RV, and I'm like, "Wow, look at that! I got my own trailer. This is cool." My role's like, I'm thinking good. I open the door, and in the trailer, in the little RV, is David Schwimmer, like Jerry Seinfeld, and a few other stars are in this room talking around the little table. And I walk in and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I was told to come in. Like, you one of the actors? Like, yeah, okay, you can come in. I walk in, and they were like not friendly off the bat. So I'm sitting there, and I have to get changed. So I'm sitting there. I stood there I did like the, the lunch meeting thing. And finally, Schwimmer looks at me, and he's like, I know you. I said, yeah, I did an episode there of Friends. And he looks at me, he goes, oh, you were the guy with Debbie May? And all of a sudden, like, and then once he approved of me, everybody else was like, oh, yeah, I saw that episode. I was like, you're all full of shit, But then they were nice after that. But then I had to get changed. And I see a little area in the back where the bed is in an RV. So I was like, I'll just go behind that curtain and get dressed. And I go to grab it. And just as I start to slide it, I see a woman's foot hanging out. And I'm like, oh, and they yell, whoa, 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 Cheryl's back there. Cheryl's back there. I'm like, I need to get dressed. Turns out it was Cheryl Hines. She was pregnant at the time, and she was sleeping in the bed, getting some shut-eye. So I had to change in the RV toilet with like one leg out the door. Like I didn't want to go, bare ass naked in front of Schwimmer and all these other stars, So I come out, and they're like, yeah, Cheryl's back there. And I'm like, one of those magical moments. I'm like, I know Cheryl Hines too. Her husband is owner of Principado Young Management, who I'm with. I met her a few times. And it was just a weird, awkward thing. And then we get on the set, and we're outside with people in New York walking around, and I'm in a doorman's outfit. People are asking me for directions. Hey, sir, how do I get to Penn Station? And I'm like, I'm an actor, but I was dressed to the nines as a doorman. And so we do the first take, and Larry David gives me the weird look. And then they take a break for a second or something with the camera. And I look at him, I was like, hey, Larry, you wrote an episode of Seinfeld about the guy touching the fruit in the fruit stand. Turns out it's a good friend of my dad's out in Queens, Joe Rizza, and he was the guy who owned the fruit stand. And was just a nice little moment I thought I would share, just while he was standing there. He starts screaming at me. Oh, that guy was such a jerk. I couldn't. He's screaming. Now, the whole crew is like, what did this bozo actor, Jimmy Palumbo, say to Larry David to enrage him? But like I said, when you do the Larry curb, even it's like you're in an episode, even when the cameras aren't rolling. So I'm thinking, oh my God, what did I do? What did I do? And next thing you know, he stops and we do a scene, and then he stops. He looks at me, he goes, that was awful. Why did you do it that way? I'm like, I don't know. I was trying to, that's kind of how he goes, do you know why you booked this? I'm like, no, I don't. He goes, because you did nothing at the audition. And I'm like, now I'm shrinking on the set. Other extras are like, oh my God, this guy's getting bitch slapped here. Then I'm like, okay. In the next take, I literally, the only thing I moved was my lips. Like I was like, totally like, I was like, okay. So he yells, cut. You know what he says? All right, now you're doing nothing. And I'm like, oh, this guy. So then we do one more take. And after the third take, he starts to corroborate with me like, hey, Jimmy, what do you think? You think that was good? I was wondering, should we? Now I said, ooh, this guy's nuts. He went from hating me to loving me. And now I'm involved with now he's getting advice from me, the great Larry David. At the end of the day, he ended up being a nice guy. But it was like, he's got that curb personality that the show captures so well.
I don't want him to be a nice guy. I like the angry curmudgeon.
That's what I mean by nice guy. He shook my hand. And then the director comes over to me and says, hey, do you know what the stare down is? I said, yeah, I watched the show. It's great. He goes, yeah, Larry wants to do it with you. Larry doesn't like to tell the actor, but if we don't tell you, just stare back at him. So when you shoot that, that part that goes do, 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 right? There's no music that's going do, 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 do. And literally, if you watch closely, there's a moment where my lips almost are going do, do. I was humming it in my head. The best part about that is it's so awkward. There's silence, and you got to stare at Larry David for a pretty long time. And then I'm proud because they had a thing on the internet, top 10 stare downs on the Curb show. And I came in number 7, which was like, yes. That to me is like when I'm 90 years old in my deathbed, I'll be like, I was the 7th stare down of that show, But that was a big booking. It was a great show. I was one of my that friends and that were or two, plus I did that movie, The Family, with De Niro, which was a big booking, and Michelle Pfeiffer and Dominic Lombardozzi. So I had 4 or 5 what I call really big bookings, and then about 100 guest star, co-star stuff, Law and Orders, and I'm one of those guys. I bat 8. You know what I mean? End of the lineup, batting 265, a couple of home runs, good glove. So that's what it's been. So
I'm trying to think of who the 8 hitter on the. It's not DJ LeMahieu. It's not Gleyber Torres. It's not Volpe, who's going to start.
I think I became like Brett. I think I'm like Brett Gardner at one point.
No, Brett had some. It was a pretty good. That was a run. He had a run. I'm not. You're not Brett Gardner. I'm sorry. No offense.
You know what? You're wrong. I made a little. I'm an old man now, but back in the day, we were doing live on tape. That show Spin City. There was a little run there.
Didi Gregorius.
No, Didi was way better than Gardner. Come on.
Well.
This is something Artie and I would have had. We used to love doing that, like comparing sports guys to career. It's like that's so funny to me.
No, this is what guys do. We're running out of Zoom time. I had a million more questions. We will do this again hopefully soon once the Beer League 2 or whatever we're calling it comes out.
Beer League the series.
And then you can catch your podcast. Where all do you want people to come and
I'm at the Jimmy Palumbo show, which is on wherever podcasts are, Apple and all that stuff, Spotify. I also am on Instagram, official Jimmy Palumbo, and Facebook, Jimmy Palumbo. It's pretty easy to get to me. I got a Patreon and all that stuff. Sorry, I probably sounded long-winded on this show. I talked more than you did. So you did a good job. You let the guests speak. Now, when you come on my show, I'm going to end up stepping over you and all that stuff. I respect Howard Stern, how good they are letting the guests speak. So I appreciate that. And it's something I need to get better at.
It's the only thing I was ever good at was being an interviewer, and I had good hair at one point in my life, so that's all.
Yeah, well, I have to wear a hat now. So if you think I'm wearing a hat to promote the show, maybe a little bit, but most of it's because, a little gray, you have a fresh head of hair. How long you been doing your podcast? I'll interview you.
7 years, 2016. Started, yeah. So it's been yeah.
I'm only 107 in once a week, so I'm a newbie.
It was a sports thing, and then turned into comedy, and just whoever I find out there that interests me, and I want to talk to them. That's how I found you.
You know what? I love that you said that, because I try to do the same thing, and then you get people, oh, you talk too much sports. Oh, you talk too much this. I'm like, it's me. If I think it's interesting, I talk. Simple as that.
Well, I mean, hopefully we'll get to do this again, and I would love to come on your show. We can talk sport. I love talking baseball. We talk bad Yankees, Mickey Rivas, and Dan Pasqua.
Obviously, you're a Cardinal fan?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I have to. I don't like Cardinal fans, but I am a Cardinal fan. Let's go with
listen, they're a historic franchise, and my buddy Jack Layton out in L.A., huge Cardinal fan. Shout out to him. And Cardinals they're a classic team. Yankees, Dodgers, Cardinals, Tigers. They're part of that original 12, I guess. So in my mind, so I never mind Cardinal fans, and I'm dying to see a game there. It's really cool. So
if you come out to the Lou, we'll get you out to a game under the arch.
There you go. Sounds awesome.
All right, we're running out of Zoom time. That's the only reason why I have to wrap this. We only get 40 minutes now. So it's here's the pitch. I'm Brad, and we'll see you next time.